is an art or talent, but is an art or talent that can be taught, and you can get better, of course, by practicing. He started out as a child actor, but he's really come into his own. But he has since left the business, and he's creating, and it's very interesting for you to listen to. So, if by no other way, let me introduce Daryl Stern, and he let him introduce himself. Let's start that way.
Well, super cool. If you're old enough to remember something called Schoolhouse Rock in the
How about that?
70s and 80s, I was the voice of Scooter Computer on the first series of cartoons that let a little boy meet a computer and explain how a computer works. The ironic part of that is computers take input, they run the program, and they give you the output that you need. That was in 1983, and it's still true today, even with this new AI, where we've got to build the correct prompts to get the right output that we want. They still work the same.
Right. Very good. Very good. So
Yeah.
now let me ask you, just give us. I know it's very difficult because you have quite a lengthy experience, but give me an idea of what your journey was, and how did you get where you are today?
Sure. My dad was my first talent agent. I was Theo and Pippin when I was 7 years old. By age 9, I had an agent in New York City. So I'm living in New Jersey, 20 minutes out of New York City. So my dad would pick me up or my mom from junior high would race into New York City. He would drive around the block. We didn't have cell phones. So I would go up, audition, come down, and try to find him on the streets of New York and get
Right.
back in the car and go home. So that led to all kinds of things, like being in a commercial for the very first Ms. Pac-Man cartridge in 1983. Of course, Scooter Computer, eventually being in the workshop for Smile, which is a Broadway show written by Marvin Hamlish. Now, you theater people know he's the guy who wrote the chorus line and other famous Broadway shows. Howard Ashman wrote Little Shop of Horrors, the book, in other words, the lyrics for it. And then I was in the show with him. In that play was Jody Benson, and he got recruited and eventually wrote The Little Mermaid, which in '89, when I graduated high school, it was on, of course, the movies, and Jody Benson was the voice of The Little Mermaid. I won the National Young Playwrights Festival. I went to college for theater, directing, acting, playwriting, all that. Got into stand up comedy in the '90s, and then threw it all away when I saw a floppy disk that said HTML. So we'll do that introduction that's up to like 1997 there, where I gave all that up to sit in front of a silly computer by myself all day.
Yeah, you mentioned cartridge, and that should bring most of us way back because before the floppy disk and everything else, there were actual
Mm.
cartridges that went into the Atari system, and the Atari system,
Yeah.
of course, was the prelude to the Xbox and everything else. Uh,
Yeah. Also the cartridges are the prelude for SSD, which is called solid state storage, where now you can buy 2 terabytes on something that doesn't have moving parts. So that's the of the cartridge that used to hold only like 2K. I'm going to nerd out on you for a second. So a disc that spins, but they would crash, and if you shook it or drop it, it would lose all the memory. And then finally they went back to the original model, which is make this a solid state unit, all electronics with the memory in it. So there you go. There's your nerdy
that's great.
explanation of
I
that.
love it. I love it because I
Yeah.
am probably 10 years older than you are. So I understand all of that.
Yes.
Can you give me a personal experience where effective networking impacted your career or business?
Well, cool. The ironic part is, although I've grown huge network online, I am still a shake hands, meet people in person. So after my divorce, I moved to Denver in 2010. For 4 years, I was still doing work that I could get online, all over the country. But then I met a wonderful lady named Angel Tussey. She ran a group called Experience Pros. I wrote them a 35-page proposal for their marketing. She thought it was so incredible. She put me on stage in front of their networking group in 2014 and said, "Oh my gosh, this Daryl Stern is a genius. Pay attention." And that's what rocketed my business to 6 figures. I booked everybody in the room. And it still has been networking which in during COVID it was, the viral, the big Zoom rooms with 500 people in them, and I just got very good at introducing myself in a way, the 90-second elevator pitch or the 60-second hello, that would get them interested enough to schedule that appointment. And then I'll caveat something else. So in Vegas, when I lived in Las Vegas, because I got married 2003 to 2006, I lived in Vegas and I sold timeshares. And I had an excellent sales coach by the name of Corey Posgay. And he taught me use words like feel, don't use the word think, always answer a question with a question. And he taught me how to be a closer. And me being an actor and a playwright and being able to listen to somebody's intonation and their voice, what mood they're in, and then come back with something that would, counter that, or keep the mood positive, or whatever you want to say about it. That made me able to close $40,000 deals in 90 minutes. I mean, these people walk in, they hate you. If you know the timeshare business, they don't want to be on the tour. And 90 minutes later, I'm making them feel so guilty that they don't spend enough time with their kids. This is another whole podcast episode. So that though was essential. All these different things that I did were essential building blocks to then my video marketing business that then took off, in 2015, were all these other skills that really you have to learn. You have to learn how to close a scale. You need to learn how to network and meet somebody and get them to schedule an appointment with you, be interested enough, right? All of these aspects were building blocks of then what took my business to six figures and beyond.
Well, you hit on a few points that I really
Yeah,
want to go back over. One thing was the pandemic, because ever since the pandemic, all people do are, cell phones and Zoom calls, and they forgot how to network. When I go on a stage and I do a breakout session or I do a work group, a workshop for a group, I always ask them who's 20, who's 30 something, and they raise their hands, everything else, and I say, okay, what I'm about to explain to you is Greek. You've never heard it before, and you're like, why should I waste my time in
right.
networking like this? And forgot all about it. So that's what the pandemic had done for us. But you brought out another point about
Mhm.
listening, and you have to listen to the person that you're speaking to. And more important than listen is the pause, right?
Yes,
So you're listening what they have to say, you're pausing before you respond, and you don't respond with the next thing that you want to say. You respond with the next thing that he was talking about or she was talking about. This way you have that conversation, and what you do is you're building up your trust. Now, know you, like you, trust you,
M-
and they'll do business with you. So know
correct,
you.
correct.
Well, everybody
Right,
everybody knows you because you're a likable
right,
guy. Like
right,
you, not so much. That narrows the field. So know you, like
right.
you, and then trust you. That builds up that a little bit. Okay. So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How about a personal experience of networking or communication, even public speaking, that
Hmm.
impacted your?
Sure. First, I'm going to go back to what you were talking about. There are now kids that are building 2.5 million businesses on 2 years by going on LinkedIn and creating viral stories. When Elvis shook his hips in the 50s, they said this is the devil. Rock and roll is horrible. We got to shut this down. It's going to destroy society. Well, sex, drugs, and rock and roll turned out to be okay. It didn't destroy us. We're still here, and we love that. All that kind of stuff. So now today, when people say, "Oh, they're taking selfies and they're using filters and they're doing this and they're doing that," we think, "Oh my God, this is the devil again. It's the end of the world." This is just the next generation, and they're doing just fine without us and our instruction. So yes, obviously, people still need to be able to communicate with each other and talk to each other face to face and do all these things. But on the flip side, those of us that are in the old generation, if we don't catch on to what's going on in terms of creating social proof, which is creating the illusion online that I am talking to you in person, it's an illusion. Because if you do the video marketing the way that I teach you how to do it, it feels to the person as if I'm talking to you. And that's, we can get into this too. This is acting and pausing and listening without the person being there. So I'm going to give you a quick example. So what I do breaks the space-time continuum. I'm going to get Star Trek on you. So in the movie Interstellar with the McConaughey, right? He goes off into space, light speed. It's now 28 years later on Earth, but it's 3 hours later in outer space. Okay. His daughter, who he left at 7 years old, that's now 28 years old, sent him a video message through outer space. She's crying. This is her father. His father's been gone now 20 years, right? He gets the message. She's in tears. He's in tears. Now, they're not talking face to face. She recorded the video here, beamed it through outer space, and now he's receiving it. But she's being so personal, talking to her father and telling him, catching him up on the 20 years of her life that she misses him, that he starts crying. That's where I come in and take what you're talking about, the experience of having a personal conversation in person and creating the illusion of it through acting in theater. You can't do it without we're going to talk about this too, what I threw away, which is acting in theater and playwriting and all this kind of skills that I've had since I was 3 years old, and bringing that back into my business and realize that's how we do this. So we create the illusion and make people feel the same way with the know, like, and trust that we would as if we went to coffee with you every BNI meeting or whatever you want to call it for months and months to get to know, like, and trust you. So it's not throw one out and do the other. It's all of it. There's not one thing that's more important than the other. Everything that you teach is essential. However, don't throw away or put down, hey, these kids don't talk on the phone. They don't. Believe me, they're so fast at growing networks and communicating. They have Discord boards now and Telegram beaming out, and a young person will have 35,000 people paying attention to them. It's nuts without having to travel a single mile. So we've got to take a look at that too, us in the older generation, if we want to keep up. And here's why. So yes, I would meet you in person, let's say in 1985. I would get to know you. I like you. I trust you. So I would work with you. But today, if I did that and I don't like and trust you, I'm also going to Google you. And I'm going to see if everything you're saying is legit. And if you have any materials, reviews, Google reviews, followers, internet, networks, or whatever, to see if you're for real or if you're kind of just some charlatan who just, is pretending to be somebody that you're not. And that's social proof. So we've got to catch up to them. And yes, it's true that they've got to have some of the skills that maybe us old timers, right, need to teach them as well.
That's so true. I'm thinking about my son who's on Discord like every night, and he has three screens, four screens, whatever. He's playing his video games online with all of his
Yep.
friends while paying attention to the Discord and certain text message. He's doing all this at the same time.
Yep.
And, that's how he's networking without him realizing he's networking.
Stand-up comedy into my public speaking. I'm going to mix the two together. I'm going to mix what I threw away, what I haven't done in 20 something years, and I can do the whole act. I have memorized, from 25 years ago. No, 1996. I don't even know how long ago that was, till now, almost 30 years ago, right? Yeah. So I did that, and all of a sudden it was fantastic, right? All of a sudden people are laughing. They're coming over to me. They just love it. They understood and got my character and all that. So one of the big things that I preach, and I think that we do still, is now I'm business version of me. I'm business version. And I'm not going to talk about, what I do for a living or I'm not that, but like how many kids I have or, that my mom had cancer 20 years ago or any of these other things. That's a problem when we talk about social networking, social media. Social comes from a word SOCII, meaning alliance, because there was a city-state in ancient Greece, ancient Rome. I'm not that smart. I just typed this into Wikipedia. Like that's all I did, right? And it means creating alliances because they were fighting the Trojans and the Spartans, and two city-states made an alliance. So that became the word social, which means alliance. So if I'm creating an alliance, these people in your network are not necessarily your customers, but they're your allies. They're your fans. They're your cheerleaders. They're your emotional support when you don't feel so well. So then if you really understand that, you say, well, what social stories would I tell? If you're meeting with somebody, maybe they're a potential client or a friend, it doesn't matter. Like, what are you going to do every week? If you met them every week, you're going to tell them a different story, right? You can say, oh my God, have you heard this one about my grandpa and the truck that broke down? Oh my God, it's a great story. It's those kind of grandpa stories, right? Grandpa's always got great stories. That is social media. right? And the better that you get, and as in public speaking, same skill set again, telling stories is what makes public speaking work, correct? You tell me, because that's what really,
Absolutely.
and television commercial, this is more like advertising when it's not. It's more like hearing grandpa's stories and tell stories that are just funny, endearing, and demonstrate, where you are and what you're doing right now, and tell a funny joke or show a picture of your dad with you, like back in 1970s, and look at the funny haircut, and all that stuff is what gets this engagement, through the roof. And we'll talk about what's next with follow up because you're going to talk about. Let's talk about follow up next. That follow up. Go ahead.
Let me just stop you right there because
Yeah.
you hit on a very important part of the public speaking. You know, you can't just go out and speak about a dry anything. You know, you have to put storytelling into your speech. You have to put comedy into your speech.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to lose the audience because
Right.
today everybody expects so much more and you want to keep them involved. And when
Right.
I say, when I first go on a stage, I say, okay, everybody who has their cell phone out, raise your hand. And about 99% of the people raise their hand.
Of
And I
course.
see that is the problem. Can you turn it off? Can you put it away? And have people like, well, no, you can't. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to take my cell phone away? Because attentive to the person.
Okay, so I turn all the cell phones on because I tell them take a picture of me and tweet it out or send it out on Instagram with these hashtags, and I'll
Right.
get more attention, and I'll get more attention to myself. I want it. It's integrated in. So again, this is the generation gap, and also I say if you can't hold an audience's attention, then you need to be a better public speaker. They could be
Yeah.
eating food. Let's eliminate the phone. They could be eating food. They could be reading a book. They could be whatever. It doesn't matter. If you're not holding their attention, then you're not holding their attention. It has nothing to do with the phone. Now, here though is where we get into the next part. So you said you have to put the stories in, and you don't force it. You don't put the stories
No,
in.
absolutely not.
They're naturally there, and now I just jumped. Oh, so the next highest level is what I call energy variance. Now this comes from the Stanislavski method of acting. Dustin Hoffman, all the great actors, you have this. What does that mean? Okay, so opera, silent movies, da, 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 right? We're all overacted because there was no amplification, right? You had to do opera really loud because there was no amplification, right? So it's all overdone. It's all over dramatic, right? Then the Russians, who had been through wars and bloodshed and horrors and that we can't speak of, this woman by the name of Stanislavski created this method of dramatic acting, and they started writing dramatic theater. Right, this was reality now. And what they said was, if you're sad, right, you're going to pull up the actual memory of when you were sad and relive it. And here's what the problem is with the public speaking and the storytelling, where you say, well, I have stories in it. So why isn't anybody talking to me? Because you're not reliving the story. You're really excited on stage because you are actually really learning how to put yourself in the mode of acting, which is not fake. A lot of people think, oh, acting, that's fake. It's not fake. It's being more authentic. It's actually having you feel the emotion that you're talking about when you're expressing it. And that's what Tony Robbins has, Oprah Winfrey, you name it, all the people that have risen to multi-million dollar, billion dollar status, is that they aren't afraid to actually be really emotional and relive the moments of their lives. They don't just talk about it. And the same thing goes on the social media. A lot of people still, PowerPoint presentation today, I'm going to explain the 3 steps to this. Not interesting, not interested in it. You lost me in 3 seconds into the presentation. I'm going to go pick up my phone and read a book, right? So all the things you're saying are spot on. I just caution when you say, well, oh, but the phone, is bad. I say, no, the phone is great. You're not going to take it away. It would be like saying when television came out, right? And then let's say they were all watching television or whatever, and you're trying to get the attention in the room, and you say, oh, everybody turn off the televisions. They're not. You just got to be better at what you do,
One,
get them to focus
one
on you.
thing that I
Yeah.
one thing that I say about phone is that it is major distraction. And when you're sitting down with somebody, and if your phone goes off, you immediately look at your phone. and if it vibrates, if it whatever, you don't have 100% of their attention. So by
Well, that's fun. So that's disrespect. Okay, if somebody has their phone on and it's beeping and ringing, yeah, that's disrespect. There have been Broadway shows on Broadway, living theater, where they have stopped the show over to
yeah,
this person and say, "What the are you doing?" And they've been yelled at and kicked out of the theater because that's just disrespect. So
yeah,
it can be on silent. You can be taking pictures and putting them on Instagram, all those kind of things where nobody's, they know it's not a disturbance to anyone. But I mean, that's just like they have it at the movie theater now, right? Silence your phone. Somebody's in front of you and they got the phone is bright and it distracts from the movie because of the light and all that kind of stuff.
I'm trying to bring this all around. So
Yeah.
let me ask you a question. What essential tip would you give somebody that's looking to improve their networking or sales skills?
Take an acting class, take a theater class, take a playwriting class, take a comedy class, join an improv comedy group. We are in a world of media, video media performance. If you aren't seen and nobody gets to know, like, and trust you, you won't attract the attention that you want. And of course, public speaking and join a Toastmasters and learn how to tell a really good story and all the other skills. This is now a performance driven media based on your ability to be more of an actor and a public speaker. It has nothing to do with the technology. This is the thing people ask all the time, right? Well, how does LinkedIn work? How do you click and you post? That's how it works. Click, post to what you're talking about, right? When you get down to it and you're going to sell, right? Either in person or in a Zoom or anything like that. Now we go into listening, generous listening, which is just let them tell their whole story. Don't say anything or go, yeah, yeah, and just let them
Interaction.
flood. They all, especially in digital marketing. My God, do they have horror stories of all the ways they've been ripped off before, and the whole thing, and where their website was before, and how it crashed, and oh my God, and and all this kind of thing. The funniest one that I know is when people say, "Well, we have videos. We're on YouTube." And they're proud of that. I have a podcast. And then I just turn to them and say, okay, how much money did that make you? Do you know the total of that? Well, I have a podcast. Well, how much money is it making you? And then they can't answer that because they're doing it because they heard that they need it. And somebody who's a really good salesman, you know, sold them on they need this now, they need that now. And that's a big thing. Going back to what you said, if I network and I can get enough clients for my plumbing, let's say local plumbing, right? And I have the van with the plumbing, the phone number on it, and that gets me the income that is fantastic for my business. No, you don't have to be on the internet. You don't have to be on the internet. You can be a public speaker and just teach workshops like you're doing. You don't have to be on the internet. It's just that it's an amplification device because there are people that need you, millions and millions of them. I mean, there's 9 billion now. I remember in eighth grade in the 80s, there were like 4 billion people. Now there's 9 billion. I mean, in our lifetime, right? That many people. There's at least 600 million people that need you, but you're not loud enough and you don't understand how this amplification device works enough to reach them. And that's your choice. You don't have to do that. But then, when you drive through the graveyard, it's not the sad thing that the people are dead. It's that, that expression. It's that they had the cure and they weren't loud enough and they didn't understand.
Ask you a
Everything that you're
question.
doing is it and all that kind of stuff.
Let
So
me.
is essential, part of it. All of it is a block to success.
We're we're
Yeah.
trying. We're trying to get the word out.
No,
But
no, no, no,
out of
no. Hold on. Do or do not. There is no try. Master Yoda, 1980, The Empire
absolutely,
Strikes Back.
absolutely, I am doing. You're absolutely right, Splinter. Out of everything you told me, what's your favorite marketing tactic?
My favorite marketing tactic is when I do my Stern storming, which is content extraction. I extract your whole life, and then you have me in your home with you, and we start shooting videos. You forget that you're making videos that people are going to see. And I just get you in a comfortable enough position that you just open up and really tell the stories from your life. I'll give you an example. A lady named Jen DePuessis. She's a billionaire. I mean, she sold $1 billion worth of mortgages and all that. Very stoic lady. Yes, no, running my business. Yes, this. And the reasons why people get so stoic in the future is because they had tragedy in the past. So as I'm talking to her, one video she talks about how her mom dropped her off at the bar when she was 8 years old. She had to go in there, tug on her dad's leg, and her dad turned around and said, "Who are you?" Didn't recognize her. And then 2 videos later, she's crying because that was her dad. That was the only dad that she knows, and she's in tears. That's the viral video. It's the bearing of your humanity because we all have tragedy. We all have had to overcome a lot in this life. And it's the stopping, just saying, "Look at me with the Queen of England, and I paid for this certificate. I'm so important." And instead, doing this humanity story, which is, showing the real pain that you've been through. The
Right.
implication in that is we've seen your other videos. We know how successful you are, but all of a sudden you become approachable. And I think this is important in networking and public speaking too. If you're so advanced, they'll think, "Wow, he's awesome, but I'm not worthy of that." Right? So you have to bear your humanity too in this kind of thing. And that's why it's social and you tell real stories from your life that not aren't all, "Look at me and how great I am."
All right. So let me ask you a question. Let me starting to close things up. Give me one takeaway from everything that we spoke about that my audience can use today.
Um, the hottest thing in the world right now is 1 minute reels, which are vertical videos. They
Right.
can work as your YouTube shorts. LinkedIn now has a TikTok function where you can see the 1 minute things. And in those, you've got a bum headline, bam in, give a really powerful tip that really has value, and that can create massive amounts of exposure fast. One of the ones that I did recently has a half a million impressions on LinkedIn. A half a million people saw Daryl Stern in that hour or that day, and that's incredible. It's just a method of vernacular. In other words, what format then goes in that 1 minute thing that will make it do what we want it to do, which is bring massive amounts of exposure. For you, it's networking tips. I wouldn't put down the phone. I would put up the networking skills. Yes, right? Because you're not going to, you're gonna tell people, "Put down your phone," while they're watching you on the phone. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
More, right? Will Michael explain the rest of the program to you? What is the secret that Michael is talking about today? Like, just tune in to the next episode or click here and sign up for the class, right? And that's the theater of it that we bared witness to in television, movies, serial dramas, all this stuff. All of our lives goes back to the 1930s. So there's a couple different tips that I made into one tip.
Yes. No, Darrell, that's great. Listen, if anybody wants to get hold of you and wants some of your services or just wants to learn all about Darrell, where would they go?
So, if you really want to scale and you really have an ego and you really want to put in the work that it takes to get up there and basically take over your industry, you can go to sternmarketing.agency and schedule your audition to go stern storming with me. So that's sternmarketing.agency, there's no .com, and you can sign up and schedule an audition to go stern storming.
That's great. Darrell, I can't thank you enough. You gave some great insights, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. And hopefully, everybody they want to learn about acting, about how to market themselves, or the comedic value. Please go see Darrell, or listen. Just ask him anything. He's good. All right. So have a great day. Well, that's a wrap, folks. A huge thank you to our special guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or my website, michaelaforman.com. Remember, until next time, keep practicing, keep connecting, and keep building those relationships. This is Michael A. Forman signing off. Take care and happy networking.